LCK Spring 2023 was an exciting start to the year for the LCK. From T1 picking up right where they left off last year, to Sandbox being the surprise of the split. We had players such as Kiin, BDD, Canna, and Kellin having bounced back splits and returning to form, but we also had big name players such as Clid, Life, and well, to be fair, pretty much all of DRX playing well below expectations. But as the split came to a close and it was time to make the All-Pro teams, there was one role in particular that many analysts and viewers were struggling to agree on. Who were the 3 All-Pro ADCs this split? Throughout the split, the top 5 separated themselves into a tier above the bottom 5. These 5 ADCs were Aiming, Deft, Gumayusi, Paze, and Viper. With 5 elite ADCs and just 3 All-Pro spots, 2 players would have to miss out on a spot. The LCK All-Pro teams are voted on by the LCK casters and analysts, LCK players, coaches, and select members of the media, all voting on their first, second, and third best player in each role. And in the ADC role, Gumayusi received first team All-Pro honors, Deft received second team All-Pro honors, and Paze received third team All-Pro honors. But these awards were met with some skepticism online, with people questioning, how on earth did Viper miss out? And was Gumayusi really the best ADC this split? So in this video today, we're going to take a look for ourselves to see if the voters got it right, or did they mess it up? So when looking at if the LCK got the All-Pro ADCs correct, the best place to start is obviously the votes themselves. First place votes earn you 3 points, second place gets you 2, and 1 point for third place. Adding up all the votes, we can see that Gumayusi earned 100 points, clearly beating out the rest of the competition. Now, while these votes show that there is a clear first and second place, with only the battle for third being somewhat close, people have long since debated who should be allowed to vote for these awards. There is a common debate not just in the LCK, but throughout League, esports, and other sports about who is the most qualified in determining the best players. Is it only the players and coaches who should be voting, as they are the ones playing and understanding the game at the highest level? Or is it the media and analysts who, unlike players and coaches, invest much more time into watching the entire league rather than the players and coaches who just focus on themselves and their upcoming opponents? Well, if we split up the votes into each of these 4 different groups of people, we actually see that besides the media, who have a 3-way tie for third place, the first, second, and third All-Pro ADCs are all the same. So if everyone is in agreement, why is there a debate among the fans? I believe there are 2 main reasons, with the first being that for the majority of the split, in a lot of people's view, Deft was the clear best ADC, not Gumayusi. Deft was looking dominant through the first round robin. Whether the team would win or lose, Deft was playing perfectly in lane and had great positioning in team fights. Unlike the other elite ADCs who all had a few games with poor performances, Deft only had one 6 game versus KT where he really struggled. Through the start of the second round robin, Defts were still performing at a high level, and as seen in this episode of the Pog State, which was filmed at the end of week 8, Atlas, Wolf, and Chronicler all had Deft as their first team ADC.
Let's start. Hand there if you agree. Deft is 1.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm not doing it.
I'm ready.
You're a Viper. Okay. So my
allow
seconds would be Viper.
Looking at the stats of just the first round robin, out of all 10 ADCs, he was first in kill participation and second in damage per minute. And for his laning stats, he was first and third in gold difference and CS difference at 10 minutes respectively. However, in their votes at the end of the split, they would have Deft second, and third respectively. This was because of a disastrous week 9 for Deft and D+, where they got 2-0'd by both T1 and Gen G, with Deft having arguably 2 of his worst performances of the split. Deft especially struggled as Xayah in Game 1 vs T1, where here he disrespects Keria and fails to dodge or flash the hook. Then in the game deciding team fight, where D+ is behind, but not completely out of it, Deft panic Featherstorms to dodge nothing, then fails to either avoid or flash the hook, and in the end, finally flashes just to die. Then, in D+'s last match of the regular split, where if they won, they could have gotten the second seed in playoffs, during Game 1, Deft and Kellin failed to track Paze's level 6, which causes them both to die and results in Zeri getting a huge lead. After that mistake, the game was essentially over. And while these might seem like small mistakes are the difference between winning and losing. And with Gumayusi having a solid final week and winning the head-to-head matchup with Deft, it was enough for some voters to put Gumayusi first. Now, on to the second of the two main reasons I mentioned earlier, which is the reason people are using as to why Viper should have been an All-Pro. This is the weakness of his teammates on HLE compared to the others, especially compared to Gumayusi and T1. Now, having good or bad teammates can affect individual awards. This can best be illustrated just by looking at each ADC's Player of the Game points. As you can see, when Hanwha Life was winning, it was very often due to Viper's great performances, whereas even though T1 won the most games, Gumayusi was rarely the leading factor in their wins. Furthermore, this can also be seen by looking at specific stats. Out of the 10 starting ADCs, Gumayusi had the second highest percentage of his team's deaths and the second lowest percentage of his team's damage. This is compared to players like Viper and Aiming, who are both top 3 in damage share and bottom 3 in death share. However, these stats don't do the best job in telling how good a player is performing versus other players in the same role. Rather, kill share and death share are stats that will be worse the better your teammates are. T1, as shown by the first team All-Pro selections, have star players in every role. Because of this, Gumayusi would have a higher death share than other ADCs whose teammates were making far more mistakes, and T1 won many of their games before the ADC role would hit its 2 to 3 item power spike that it really needs to start doing a lot of damage. If you look at just laning stats, you can see Gumayusi was able to get huge leads in lane. Viper was still above average in lane, but partially due to his own performances with the lead, and partially due to Clid or Kiin being far behind, to win, Hanwha Life Esports had to try to get to late game where they would protect Viper and rely on him to win teamfights. Stats are an important and useful tool, but can also be very misleading. Let alone the effect of teammates on individual stats, they are also affected by the champions played and the drafts the teams have. Viper has great stats across the board and makes very few obvious mistakes, but especially when HLE is behind, it can seem like he's invisible in teamfights and doesn't have the faith in his teammates to back him up like Gumayusi, who is never afraid to go in and die if it means his teammates will win the fight. The strength and weakness of a team will have an impact on the opportunities for an ADC to perform, but the truly great players perform great in not only the opportunities they are given, but also are able to find and create opportunities for themselves. Now, for my personal opinion, I think it was a super close race with no clear number one, but when considering the entirety of the split, I believe Deft should have been first team All-Pro. He was just the most consistent ADC throughout the entire split, always destroying people in lane, and was a factor in every game D+ played. Gumayusi is my second team All-Pro ADC. Similar to Deft, he was dominant in lane, and while he did have a few deaths earlier on in the split where he got caught out for no reason, he always found a way to deal the maximum damage in teamfights. Third team is the hardest choice. Aiming is a great player and continued his stellar form from summer last year, but he doesn't get as much recognition as he deserves because the LCK has too many good ADCs that are above him. Paze is already one of, if not the best mechanical player in the LCK, but his decision making needs to improve a bit for me before I can say he's truly a top 3 ADC. And I think the voters might have been focusing a bit too much on his upside and highlight plays rather than the entirety of his play this split. But for me, Viper is my third team All-Pro ADC. He is an insane team fighter that still does good in lane with the worst support of the 5 elite ADCs. And by the end of the split, he was playing arguably at the highest level of them all. However, he just struggled to push his leads and create advantages for himself, and early in the split, Viper and all of HLE struggled to really play together and allow Viper to truly shine. So did the voters get it right? Well, no, at least according to me. My All-Pro ADCs were similar, but slightly different, and I'll link my full All-Pro team in the description below. But in reality, there is no correct answer. All-Pro teams are just people's opinions, and there is no way of proving who the better player actually is. I believe the main purpose of All-Pro teams isn't just to award players for being great, but to create discussion. It's good for the league for people to have debates and for people to be interested in the LCK. Discussion is important for keeping any league alive. And in the end, I guess the voters believe that when you need it most, you can always count on Gumayusi to do something special.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point you're gonna have to engage. Land says flash ult.
Hey, you gotta go. Hook misses and chains miss. Zeus, Meganar, no GA, and he goes.
Keria.
Armas, Guma goes so far forward, and the damage, it looks like it might just be there. They take out BDD. Guma gets the double, and I think that might just be it. T1 have finally won the game. T1 take game number 5.